Hey, welcome back to the channel, and if you are new here, do yourself a favor right now and smash that subscribe button, because we bring you the rugby stories that matter. The ones that go beyond the highlights and the tries, the stories shaking the foundations of the game we love. And if you are already part of the family, hit that like button before this video is over. It genuinely helps us keep delivering content like this to you. Now, with that said, let us get into today's story, because this one is big, it is controversial, and it is a conversation that the rugby world simply cannot avoid any longer. South African rugby is once again under the microscope, and not for the reasons the Springbok faithful would want. The latest development to rock the green and gold came just days ago when Springbok tight head prop Asanathi Untlabakanye was handed an 18-month doping ban by an independent doping tribunal panel. The ban is effective from the 13th of May 2026, which means Untlabakanye will not be eligible to return to the field until the 13th of November 2027. That date, for those of you doing the maths at home, is the very day of the Rugby World Cup final in Australia. In other words, Untlabakanye will miss the 2027 Rugby World Cup entirely. His career, at least at the highest level, now hangs in genuine uncertainty, and the circumstances surrounding this case raise questions that go far beyond one player. Let us start with the facts of this specific case, because it is important to understand exactly what happened here. In an out-of-competition test on the 22nd of May 2025, Untlabakanye's sample returned a positive finding for anastrozole, a hormone and metabolic modulator classified as a specified substance under South African anti-doping rules. Now, what makes this case particularly complex and, honestly, a bit of a tragic one is what happened next. Untlabakanye, following protocol, listed the drugs he was on during the routine testing process, and on that form, he also self-declared the use of DHEA, a non-specified performance-enhancing substance, after clearing the prescription with both an endocrinologist he had seen to address his weight issues and a sports doctor. He did not test positive for DHEA in his sample. He voluntarily told the testers himself. Think about that for a second. The man declared it himself. He was open, he was transparent, he followed what he believed was the correct medical process. SA Rugby issued a statement saying the medication was prescribed by a specialist physician early in 2025 for medical reasons and was taken with the approval and supervision of a medical doctor specifically appointed to manage the medical affairs of professional rugby players. They went further, stating that Untlabakanye acted in good faith at all times and never sought to gain an unfair advantage. Yet, because of the principle of strict liability in anti-doping law, none of that goodwill could save him. The independent doping hearing panel acknowledged the mitigating circumstances, including a medical prescription and his transparent self-declaration, and reduced the potential maximum 4-year ban down to 18 months. But reduced or not, the ban is the ban. His career has been upended. The doping tribunal also ruled that all of Untlabakanye's individual competitive results and benefits, including Player of the Match awards, personal accolades, match fees and bonuses, are disqualified with effect from the date of sample collection. Everything he worked for during that period, stripped away. His club, the Lions, confirmed the news and said they would support him through the process, while noting that his period of ineligibility means he was immediately removed from their squad. SARU had previously defended the player publicly, and the case had hung over him for months while he continued to play for both the Lions and the Springboks, awaiting the outcome of the hearing. He even earned international caps for South Africa during the 2025 November window while this cloud was looming over him. He featured for South Africa in the 73-0 victory over Wales and was an ever-present for the Lions in the United Rugby Championship throughout the season. Now, here is where this story gets even bigger, because Untlabakanye's case does not exist in isolation. It is the latest chapter in a lengthy and deeply uncomfortable book that South African rugby has been writing for years. An investigation has revealed that anti-doping controls in South Africa have dropped more than 6-fold over the past decade, precisely the period in which the Springboks rose to the summit of world rugby. Let that land for a moment. WADA records show that tests carried out by SAIDs reduced from 785 in 2015 to just 127 in 2024. That is a staggering decline. And over that same period, UK anti-doping actually increased its rugby testing from 998 to 1,241. So while one of the sport's powerhouses was ramping up its efforts to protect the integrity of the game, South Africa was going in the completely opposite direction. And the numbers when it comes to violations are equally alarming. South Africa recorded 89 doping violations in rugby during the period coinciding with their back-to-back World Cup triumphs in 2019 and 2023, which accounted for approximately 20% of the entire worldwide total. 20% of the whole world from one country. Now, before anyone rushes to the comments to say this proves anything definitively about the World Cups, let us be clear. There is no direct evidence that the Springboks won those titles through doping. The team is also tested by World Rugby, by European governing bodies when their players compete in the URC and European competitions, and by anti-doping authorities in other countries. The picture is more complicated than any single headline can capture, but the numbers are uncomfortable, and anyone who cares about clean sport has a right to ask questions. Several prominent cases have already placed the spotlight firmly on the sport. Former Springbok winger Afiwe Dianti served a 4-year suspension between 2019 and 2023. Fly half Elton Yankees and winger Sibusiso Nkosi both received lengthy bans in 2024 after returning positive tests. And now, Kanye joins that list, becoming one of the most high-profile names to face consequences in recent memory. These are not fringe players. These are Springboks, players who have represented the world champions on the biggest stages the game has to offer. So why has testing dropped so dramatically? SAID's CEO Khalid Gallant has blamed the suspension of South Africa's only WADA-accredited laboratory in March 2024 on the recent decrease in tests, along with financial pressures and logistical complications. Costs of testing have soared as samples must be sent to Qatar or Belgium and paid for in US dollars or euros. The funding pressures are real, and the CEO has admitted that rugby's reduced share of total testing is not ideal. But admitting something is not ideal and actually fixing it are two very different things. SAID's received a baseline grant of 31 million rand in 2025 and 2026, projected to rise to 33.6 million by 2028. Critics argue that for a nation producing World Cup winning rugby and generating enormous commercial revenue through the sport, the investment in anti-doping infrastructure should be proportional to that success. What makes this conversation so layered is that South Africa actually has a history of being proactive at grassroots level when it comes to anti-doping. SAID's made the decision years ago to chase the doping problem to its roots, testing at schools level, which was unprecedented anywhere in the world at the time. They found positive results at schoolboy tournaments, including teenagers, in some cases with coaches and parents involved. So there is genuine effort and genuine concern within the South African system. But effort at school level and a dramatic reduction in testing at professional level create a contradiction that is hard to square. And the timing of Kanye's ban, just as the Springboks are beginning their build-up towards the 2027 Rugby World Cup in Australia, adds a layer of significance that cannot be understated. This is a World Cup cycle now. Every squad decision, every injury, every selection has consequences that ripple forward 2 years. Kanye had been an ever-present figure for both the Lions and the Springboks and featured in the 73-0 demolition of Wales in the November series. Losing a tight head prop of that caliber at this stage of the cycle is a genuine blow to Rassie Erasmus and his planning, regardless of the circumstances surrounding the ban. There will now be an appeals window. Kanye himself, SAID's, World Rugby and WADA all have 21 days to file an appeal against the sanction to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. Whether any of those parties choose to do so remains to be seen. SAID's has confirmed they are reviewing the merits of the decision. The player has maintained his innocence throughout the process, and given that the mitigating factors were acknowledged by the tribunal itself, an appeal to seek a further reduction in the ban is not out of the question. But even if an appeal was successful and the ban was shortened, the Rugby World Cup shadow looms very large. The bigger picture here is a sport asking serious questions of itself. Rugby's global anti-doping system relies on multiple layers of oversight, and World Rugby does test players from all nations year-round, including out of competition. But the data showing a massive decline in domestic testing in South Africa, paired with a violation count that represents a fifth of the worldwide total, creates a perception problem that goes beyond any individual case. Perception matters in sport. The integrity of competition matters, and the fans, the players who compete clean, the nations who invest heavily in anti-doping infrastructure, they deserve a level playing field. Those conversations are now louder than ever. Asanati Ntlabakanye himself deserves a degree of sympathy in how this unfolded. He was a man who declared his medication openly, who followed medical advice from qualified professionals, and who now pays the price under a strict liability system that makes no exceptions for good faith. That is the brutal reality of anti-doping law. Ignorance and good intention are not defenses. The responsibility lies entirely with the athlete. That is the framework the sport has chosen, and it exists for a reason. But it does not make the human story here any less complicated or any less difficult to watch. South African rugby will move forward. The Springboks will continue to prepare for 2027. SAIDS will hopefully address the funding and infrastructure issues that have led to this decline in testing. But this story is not going away. The record shows 89 violations. The record shows a 6-fold drop in tests. The record shows high-profile bans. And the rugby world will be watching very closely in the months and years ahead. If you found this breakdown valuable, please share it with a fellow rugby fan. Drop your thoughts in the comments below and hit that like button if you have not already. Your support keeps this channel going and means we can keep covering the stories that truly matter in rugby. We will see you in the next one.